What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you. Want to thank my sponsor, Steel Supplements. Link and discount code down in the description. Also, you know I'm a Weeble, preferred influencer. Market hopefully stabilized a little bit. I'm not losing as much money as I was, but the best promotion they have is in the pen comic. Get yourself some free stocks. Get ahead of the game. And speaking of the game, if you watched the Madden Championship over the weekend, there was some questions, I guess over the week rather, there were some questions posed to Clint using his statement about the average score. Now, Clint responded to this, and let me preface, before I actually address this, let's go down memory lane. This is the problem I have with Clint, okay? First of all, if we go back a couple years ago, there was somebody that was kind of catfishing the community. Clint haphazardly responds to this person about this, what was a man, posing as a female, which is just weird, wanting to be a game changer. So Clint got called out for this, blocked a lot of people afterwards. And then we've also seen, and this is maybe the most egregious, last year in the height of the Madden just getting slammed for being a poor product, Clint came out and said, in a response to another female, it's odd, isn't it? Only people he responds to is negativity in females. He says that, he was interviewing Madden players and this one child was so excited about Madden, but he didn't want to post because he was going to be attacked. Clint, we never found out about that child. Isn't that weird? A lot of people in the community asked because we wanted to support that child. We wanted to have that child on our platforms. I wanted to interview that kid on my platform, right? So a lot of us behind the scenes reached out to Clint and said, Clint, this person that you brought up, can you put us in touch with them? And you know what? That never happened. Because you know why? I don't think that conversation ever happened, Clint. I really don't. So moving forward, this is where Clint gets himself in trouble. And let me give you an exclusive, right? When I went down to EA, this probably gives you a little insight to the mind of Clint Oldenburg, okay? Clint drew a full 11 on 11 X's and O's and asked me how to diagram how to block, okay? So I diagrammed that. I basically said, you can only block so many people. How can you attempt to block this to maximize time in the pocket? And I basically, positioned off the best case scenario for one-on-one blocking. Clint then erases the board, turns to everyone attempting to humiliate me, and says, no, you don't have enough players to block. That's all there is to it. And I felt like saying, Clint, if it was a trick question, you're supposed to preface that just a little better. But to keep things cordial, I just kind of chuckled and laughed along, okay? But that's the type of person, make no mistake, that's the type of person we're dealing with here. If you really want to know my personal opinion, all respect to his athletic achievements aside, the reason Clint struggled to make it in the NFL is the same reason Clint struggles to make a quality game. He can't respond to criticism well. He doesn't respond to criticism of someone telling him he's doing something wrong with anything other than a response as to why and a validation as to how. So if you can imagine this person playing football under someone like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, and they went to Clint and said, Clint, you're making a mistake here, and rather than just accept that for what it is, the way I did, Clint, when we met, by the way, and appreciate the type of person that you're working with and try to learn from the situation, whether you're actually learning on the field or whether you're actually learning about someone's mentality, which, by the way, Clint, I've done. You never thanked me for the award I got you for continuing to make the worst sports game on the planet, by the way. You defend it with irrational logic. So, this tweet here is just so poetic. Clint basically said, hey, listen, the reason our game is realistic is because of these average scores. Which we all know is kind of a moronic thing to say. Like, the score isn't exactly what defines realism in a game, right? So, now that things get way out of whack, because of the way the game is programmed with all these X factors that make players unstoppable, or at least to a degree make players more accurate than they should be. When called out on this, Clint says, two of the best players in the world scoring 3 to 4 times more than the general population is not shocking, is it? Average points per game is not meant to be representative of a subset of players, but of all players in the ecosystem. I love when you ever have somebody that tries to talk smarter than they are, and you can immediately point it out because of how just uncannily something is written? Who calls online gaming an ecosystem? Who calls all players a subset? I mean, Clint, here's the reality. There's a giant issue with your logic. Because if you're saying two of the best players in the world, they should be able to play defense just as good as they play offense, correct? If you have a game that is fair and balanced, if you have a game that is equally as challenging on each side, then you should not have this type of issue. The reason these players scored so much is because the defense in this game is broken. The reason the defense in the game is broken is because there's people like you that work on the game that rather than accept, in many cases, creators who have worked on this game longer than you have making content, showing you what's wrong, showing you what's broken, giving you suggestions as to how we'd like to have it fixed, has resulted in not just people like myself, but actual NFL players coming into our community simply trying to get a better game from your company, and your response to us has always been something like this. You're wrong, here's why, let me give you poor examples. Whether it's a child that you claim to have interviewed, or whether it's you saying that these are the two best players in the world, so it's okay for them to score multiples of what you just said you use as a barometer for the game being realistic. The fact of the matter is the game has been unbalanced for a very long time. There's multiple things broken on the defense. There's actually more things broken from a defensive logic standpoint than an offensive logic standpoint because there's much more computer movement needed on the defense than the offense. On offense, you have control of the ball carrier at all times. On defense, you really only control one position mildly in open field. The logic is much more difficult to program, I would imagine, from a defensive standpoint, having to read and react, a system we know Madden doesn't have, to all the things the offense is doing. So when you have an offensive player programmed to run routes, that's very simple to do. When you have a defensive player programmed to cover them, that's intrinsically more difficult. Then you have to go position-wise, linebacker, defensive back, safety, trying to cover those same things. It's much more complex, Clint. I know you're not a programmer, you're a game designer, but this is the reality of what you're dealing with. Your logic, though, is so broken that if we actually used real football, you could say to yourself, if the Colts and the Titans had played each other, and they have the two best running backs in the league, then it would make sense that each of them would run for 400 yards, because that's a multiplier of what they ran during the season, and they're the two best playing against each other. You know why that doesn't make sense, Clint? Because defenses actually play football too. You know, defenses, what you lined up against in practice? Fix your game. Stop giving excuses for your product. Accept that it's in a bad place and let's all move on together. We can have a great community building a better product that may even sell more than it is right now. But not until we get people in that building that understand the issues this game has and are willing to listen and correct them. Love to know your thoughts on this. Appreciate you checking out. I will be back as soon as I can with more commentary.